everyone, welcome to the Victorian Garden Advanced Artistry pattern. This is Tara Lynn here. I've got my surface ready to go. I'm using a 20 centimeter tray. My inside circle here is about 18 centimeters, so you need at least 18 centimeters for the design. That is 7 inches, so I would recommend a 7 to 8 inch tray. And I painted the base tropical blue plus black. I used a little bit of black to mute the tone. It's a really pretty color. I actually, when I was thinking about this, wanted to change the background color, but I am just in love with this tropical blue. It's a really pretty blue for the background. So that's what I did for my background. I've got my stencil marked on here. I have a 16 arm stencil, and I just used my Happy Dotting Company stencil here. And then what I did was I used a compass to just add an additional ring, and each ring is about 1.5 centimeters away from the previous ring. So I just needed to add one more in here to get it all the way to the edge of the design. And then for my center dot, I want to use my largest dotting tool, which is 15.5. However, if you don't have a 15.5 millimeter dotting tool, what I would recommend is just finding maybe a cap or something you can just put right in the middle there and use a pencil to trace around and get a nice big center dot. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but aim for 15.5 millimeters. And now that my base is all ready to go, let's go ahead and get started. Whenever I'm doing a large circle, so my inside circle, my center dot is going to be our champagne gold, and I want it to be 15.5 millimeters. What I want to do is load up the paint on the surface a little bit first, because this dotting tool is too big. It's going to hold bubbles. It's just not real friendly when it comes to big dots. So I'm just going to get a little bit of my paint out and put on here first, and then I'm just going to use the dotting tool to squish it into shape. And I gotta be careful because I've got some clumpies in here. Alright, so I've got lots of paint on there. And then I'm going to use this tool, get a little bit of paint on the tool, and then we're going to give that a little squishy squish, and hopefully, there we go. Perfect. So that's a little trick I use when I've got these big dots. And that just helps me keep them nice and round. Otherwise, bubbles get in there. It just sometimes doesn't work out well with the big dots. All right, so the hard part is over. Most of the rest is smooth sailing. All right, for the first part of the design, we are going to use Sable Brown and a 3 millimeter dotting tool, and I'm going to do a ring of 16 dots. So I'm going to start with my north, south, east, and west. And I'm going to do halfway in between those. That gives me 8. And then that sets me up to do one more dot in between each of these. That gives me 16. Next, I am going to go up to a 3.5 millimeter tool. If you don't have 3.5 millimeters in your toolbox, I would suggest using a 3. Stick with the 3. And then we're going to do another ring of 16, and we're going to pull these into pins or teardrop shapes. So let's see, I need to get a little more paint. I'm using my warm beige, 3.5 millimeters. And so what I'm going to do is I've got my 3.5 millimeter tool, and I'm just going to have a little bitty stylus, so just a tiny one. And these are offset rings first of all, so we're going to make our ring, or offset dots, I'm sorry. So make our dots. Start with 4. And then you're just going to take that stylus and pull it into a pin shape. Just kind of fit it in between the previous dots just a little bit. And of course the first one that I did had a little bubble in it. So I'm just going to clean that up. Sorry, I'm probably being nitpicky, but it's bugging me. There we go. All right, so we're going to do 16 of those following the same step. I'm just going to do four dots, pull them into my little pin shapes, my little teardrop shapes, and I'm going to keep going until we have all 16 finished. The surface that I'm working on has some texture to it, so if some of my dots look a little funny, I do have texture. This is not a completely flat surface. I'm not sure how well that's going to translate on camera. So we've got a ring of 16, and then we have another ring of 16, and we turn those into little teardrop shapes. Next, I am going to move on to my sugared peach color, which is a beautiful creamy color, 4 millimeters. And I'm going to do another ring of 16 that we pull into these teardroppy pins. So give yourself a little room so that you have space to pull that teardrop shape. But again, I'm going to start with 4 and just keep working my way around until they are all finished. This is 4 millimeters sugared peach. We have it, another ring of those. All right, next I've got my 2 millimeter stylus. I'm going to go back to Sable Brown, and we are going to do a set of double dots in between each of these. So I'm going to dip into my paint, and then I'm going to go dot, dot, dip, dot, dot, dip, dot, dot. So we've got double dots, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Next, we're going to use our Thicket, which is our really pretty sagey green. I'm going to go up in size to a 5 millimeter tool. And we're going to do dots in the spaces. So where our double dots are, that's where we want our Thicket dots to be. 5 millimeters in the spaces. bit of a glare on there, so I'm trying to just hold it up where it's easy to see. All right, we are gonna get our vintage pink and our 6mm tool. Oops, I'm sorry. I said vintage pink, didn't I? I mean gold. Gold, gold, gold. My bad. Okay, 6mm tool, champagne gold. We're gonna do 16 dots. I apologize for that error in my head as I'm planning. When we do top dots, I want to have a gold base, and then we're going to do a pink top dot and then a gold on top of that. So that's what I was thinking. But right now, 6mm gold, and these go on every line. Look at how bubbly my paint is. Metallic paint is just really gooey. It's beautiful, but it's a little harder to work with. All right, so 16 champagne gold dots. Just cleaning up my splatter a little bit. Next, I'm going to switch to the vintage pink and get my 2mm tool, and we're going to walk the dots around these gold dots. I want a 2mm center, so I'm going to go around and do 2mm dots on every one of my lines. Pop some of my bubbles in my gold paint here, so pardon me for just 1 minute. I'm getting down to the bottom of my bottle, so I got lots of bubbles. All right, so center dot is 2mm. Then I'm going to flip to my 1.5mm side, and I'm going to walk the dots on each side. So many bubbles. Next, we are going to Sable Brown, and we're going to add another layer onto this petal, continuing with the 2mm tool and the 1.5 on the sides. I'm going to do swipes this time. So I'm still going to do my center dot, 2mm Sable Brown, Once I go all the way around, I'm going to switch to my 1.5mm end, continuing with the Sable Brown, but I'm going to add a swipe on each side. Probably can't do it all with one swipe, so I'm going to do kind of a half swipe and then pull it the rest of the way. Half swipe, pull it the rest of the way. So we're going to go all the way around with the dots and the swipes. Alright, next I'm going to get a 3mm tool. You can either use a 3mm stylus or a 3mm flat tool, whichever you prefer. But 3mm is what I'm going to use, and the warm beige. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a set of double dots. So I want them to line up with the center dot at the end of the petal. So I'm going to find out where that ring is, and then I'm going to do a set of double dots. And we're going to do this in each space, dip and dot each time for consistency in size. We're going to move on to sugared peach, 6mm. We're going to place a dot right in the base of that little platform that we created. So in the spaces, 16 6mm dots in sugared peach. Splatter today. Ugh. Once I have all 16 of those, I'm going to go back to my warm beige 3mm tool, and I am going to swoop outward. So I'm going to start up by that double dots and swoop outward. One on the right and one on the left. And we do this all the way around. back to Vintage Pink. I'm going to get my 3.5 millimeter tool. Again, if you don't have 3.5 millimeters, go down to a 3. I'm at my next ring here, and what I'm going to do is a triple dot crown. I call it a triple dot crown right next to that element we just created. So dip and dot, and then dip and dot again. And these fall in the spaces, in the center of the spaces. All right, next I've got my brush. This is a size 2. It's just a medium size long bristle brush, and I'm going to do swoops on each side. And you can use a 3 millimeter stylus and pull the swoops if you do not have a brush. So please don't let the lack of a brush stop you. Because I'm working on texture, this was going to be a lot easier for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some paint on our brush, Vintage Pink, and I'm just going to swoop inward. On each side. And I'm not going a big distance, so I don't need to push down very hard. I just push down a little, pull, and then lift up at the end. Shorter brush is probably actually easier for this if you have a shorter brush available. All right, next we are using Thicket and 5mm tool, and we're going to do another set of double dots. So in between these sets of 3, I'm going to dip and dot and dip and dot. So there's a double dot there, and we're going to do that all the way around in each section. All right, once we have those double dots, we're gonna get our champagne gold. And you want a 1.5mm stylus, and we're gonna add swoops on each side. I'm not gonna start the swoop way up at the top. I'm gonna start it over towards the side a little bit. And I'm gonna add one to the right and one to the left, like we're just giving that a big hug. I have used this type of pattern with 2 dots and swipes on the sides in some of my older pieces, and it always reminds me of owl eyes. So that's what I call this part here, is owl eyes. So we go all the way around with that, giving those double dots a hug. All right, we are going to get our 6mm tool and Thicket. And as part of this pattern, we are going to add a dot in the middle so that there's a set of 3 Thicket dots together. This one falls right on a line. Then I'm going to get a 3mm stylus. We're going to do a center dot and then swoops on each side. So I'm going to do my center dot first. Champagne gold, 3mm. So 3mm champagne gold center, and then 1.5mm swipes on each side. My gold is so clumpy. I love this color, but I definitely need a new bottle. Okay, next, Sable brown, 3mm dotting tool, 3mm stylus, and I am going to add one dot underneath this green set of 3, just kind of filling in some of that space. 3mm sable brown. We're going to continue using the sable brown, and this time 6mm dotting tool, and we're going to need a stylus because we're going to pull some pins or pull some teardrops. I've got a little bug on my table here. All right, 6mm, right where my last ring is, just outside my last ring, I'm going to add a dot, and we're going to pull these into teardrops. I'm going to do about 4 at a time. Guess it's time to close my windows. I'm getting some buggies in here. We've been having really beautiful fall weather. Brown can be a really difficult color to incorporate in patterns. It works really well when you have kind of a monochrome, like if you're doing something that's all coffee colors or neutrals. Brown works really well, and any other time I've really had a difficult time incorporating it, but I feel like this color palette is just stunning. I love the brown touches. It's just, this is such a pretty take on a neutral palette. And this is such a nice warm brown. Right, next we are going to use Vintage Pink, 3 millimeters, and we are going to add another triple dot crown in this pattern right above these teardrops. And this should take you right to the edge. If you need to modify, perhaps you're too close to the edge, you could just do a single dot. Sometimes we have to be a little flexible when following patterns, because just depending on our mood and how we're dotting that day, we can work a little looser or work a little tighter. And while it all ends up looking beautiful, we end up in different places. All right. I am gonna find my 2mm stylus, and we are gonna walk the dots on each side. I'm gonna start on the right side first, and then I'll go back and finish on the left. Little boo-boo. See if I can fix it. Made it worse. I should know to leave those alone until my paint dries. Alright, that's a little better. Not perfect, but good enough. So we do those petals all the way around. Next, I am going to get my champagne gold, my 1.5mm tool, and I am going to walk the dots in a straight line in between the petals we just did. after I finish walking those dots, I'm going to come back and put one dot on each side with my 1.5 millimeters, just to kind of give this element that we just made a little something extra. So same size, 1.5 millimeters, and I'm just dip and dot, dip and dot. Alright, that is it for the base of this design. And what you want to do is go ahead and let this dry completely, and we're going to do some top dots. So I'm going to pause this video, and you can go ahead and pause this video, and we'll come back when everything is dry. Alright, I am pretty dry, and we're going to do some top dots. I'm going to start with the center dot. In this center, I'm going to get a 10 millimeter tool, and we're going to use the vintage pink. And start with a 10 millimeter top dot in the center. Next, I'm going to get my 4 millimeter tool. We're going to keep using that pink, and I'm going to add top dots in this ring of gold. Get a 3 millimeter stylus, and we're going to use our warm beige, and I'm going to add 3 millimeter dots on this ring of Thicket. I'm going to use the same tool and the same color, and where we've got our double dots, I'm going to add a top dot of warm beige, 3 millimeters, on top of the Thicket. add 4mm in warm beige for the large Thicket dot. I'm gonna use my Thicket paint 4mm tool, and we've got a ring right here with the sugared peach in the middle, and I'm gonna add a Thicket top dot in that ring. Alright, I am going to let this dry, and then on top of the pink, we've got gold and pink in two areas. I'm going to dry that, and then I'm going to come back and do a third top dot just on those with gold. So go ahead and pause the recording here, let your piece dry or dry it with a hair dryer, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, I am dry. I'm going to get my gold and my 6mm tool, and I'm going to add one more dot right in the center. I'm going to get a nice small stylus. I'm going to use 2mm, and I'm going to add a tiny little champagne gold dot so that it's gold, pink, and then gold. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I've got my 2mm stylus here. I've got this set of 3 pink dots here. I'm going to add a gold top dot in each of those. Really, I'm cheating a little bit. You should dip and dot each time. My gold is kind of clumpy, so I'm getting dots of different sizes, and I just kind of have to try to make them all the same. that is the final step. I hope you love this one as much as I do. I would love it if you would share your piece with me either in the share space or in the Facebook group. Thank you so much for participating in this month's designs. I think I kind of felt a return to traditional dotting a little bit with the Victorian garden designs that we've done this month. It just kind of brought me back to some of the old stuff that I really enjoyed starting with. I based a lot of these on some elements, some little bits and elements that I found in some of my older pieces. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. This color palette to me is very calming, and I can't wait to see what you've created with it. Thank you so much everyone for joining me this month. I will see you in the next video. Have a great night everyone.